Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, DraftSight for AEC Top 10 Tips and Tricks. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend today. Today we're going to go over 10 features in DraftSight that save a lot of time and effort when drafting and putting together submittal packages for various stages of your AEC design process. My name is Jack Lane, and I am a DraftSight application engineer here at Dassault Systems, and I have over 10 years of experience using various 3D, 2D drafting tools, all sorts of different CAD softwares. And I also worked in the AEC design world for a few years. So I have spent a lot of time putting together design development drawings, construction documents, schematic design, and these are a mix of practices that I implemented, as well as practices that I wish I had implemented at the time. I think that what we're going to talk about today will hopefully really be impactful for the AEC user out there. So a quick overview of our list. We're going to start with number 1, the Page Layout Manager, which is just a more efficient way to manage print settings and page layouts within individual files. And then number 2, we're going to talk about the PDF import tool, which allows you to batch import PDFs into your DWGs. Number 3, we're going to talk about fields, which allow you to quickly display and analyze certain information and data about certain files. And number 4, we're going to talk about custom blocks, using custom blocks to create smart labels and just kind of draft more efficiently. Number 5, we're going to utilize ViewPorts just to make organizing our scales and sheets more efficiently. Number 6, we're going to talk about annotative scaling, specifically with blocks and annotations, and how utilizing annotative scaling can really save times when organizing your sheets. Number 7, drawing review tools. So once your package is all set, just some really useful tools that we offer that allow you to spell check and just review your drawings. And number 8, we are going to talk about the Sheet Set Manager. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are actually going to be tied into the Sheet Set Manager. If you see the 3D Experience compass pop up here on a certain topic, just know that we're going to circle back to that specifically when we talk about the Sheet Set Manager. And number 9, batch plot, specifically batch printing to PDFs through the Sheet Set Manager or just through DraftSight itself. And then number 10, pack and go, the ability to share your entire data set with nested XREFs as well as any other file required to open those DWGs. So starting out with number 1, we have the Page Layout Manager. The Page Layout Manager was introduced in DraftSight 2023, and it allows you to save page layouts and print configurations within the drawing file itself, rather than an external file on your hard drive. So I'm going to jump into DraftSight here, and the first thing you want to do when you use the Page Layout Manager is just to ensure that it's turned on. So if you navigate up to the DraftSight drop-down, Options, it's located in System Options, Printing, General Options, and you can see you can turn it on and off here. And I have it on right now, so I'm going to leave it as is. But if it is not on, I would recommend using it by turning it on and clicking OK. You can launch the Page Layout Manager by right-clicking your Sheet tab and clicking Page Layout Manager. And right off the bat, I want to draw attention to the import button here. So if you're switching over from another 2D CAD tool, you can still utilize your existing print configuration files, these CFG files, or any of the other files here to use as a page layout. So you don't have to spend time recreating these page layouts and these print configurations. You can still utilize the ones that you might be utilizing with your current 2D CAD tool, which is a big time saver. So I'm going to create a page layout. You can name it whatever you want, and you can even use an existing page layout as a template or a starting point. So I'm just going to, for this example, create layout 1, And you can see our print configuration manager here, where you can change all your settings from printers, plotters, range, scale, offset, your print styles, which you can also import and utilize from existing 2D CAD tools, and then shaded views and additional options here. So I already have mine set up, so I'm going to keep this one EC022 and close it here. And again, the great thing about the Page Layout Manager is if you are sharing DWG files with other teams or other disciplines, you no longer need to attach an associated configuration file with it if they would like to print it. That all those settings are saved within the DWG itself, which is a real time saver, and you avoid a lot of headaches and attaching additional files. Now moving on to number 2, we have our PDF import tool. It's pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to take PDFs and import them, whether they're raster PDFs or digital PDFs. You can import them right into DraftSight with the option to specify certain entity recognition, layering, things like that. We'll go through that in a second. But I know it's a favorite of our users and our customers, and it's very useful when you talk about AEC design and sheet creation. So jumping back over to DraftSight, I have a blank file open, and what I'm going to do here is import a PDF of a drawing sheet, and we just want to take the title block out of that PDF because we're interested in utilizing it, but we currently don't have a DWG, just a PDF. So I'm going to go to the Import tab, go to PDF here, and first I'm going to select the PDF, select it here, open, and now we can see our PDF is in the PDF import interface. It's only a one-page PDF, so it's just showing up with one, but you can do any size, any amount of pages will show up here, and you select the pages you'd like to import right from this interface. And some of our positioning options here, I'm just going to insert at 0, 0. Scales 1, rotation as 0 is perfect. And before I click OK, I want to go up to the options here just to show some of the additional options that we have. You can see intelligent recognition. You can import image and path objects, true type text. You can ignore white fills, as well as maintain line style and line weight. And the default actually is to use the PDF layers, but for this example, I'm just going to load it onto the current layer, which I believe is just layer 0 because this is an empty file. But this looks good, so I'll close it out and import. And as you can see, our PDF loaded, and because it was a digital PDF that was created in DraftSight, it loads in with recognized entities here, and it is default a block. So I'll explode the block just so it's all the individual entities, and you can see all this text is actually recognized as text, as notes, which is really nice. So, for the sake of the example, we are trying to just extract the title block, so I'll get rid of the contents, and there you go. Now we've successfully extracted a title block just from a PDF. Moving on to number 3, we have fields. Fields let you update visible information. For example, modification date, drawing name, author, and much more. Fields are great because they can automatically pull and display certain information. So you don't have to manually manage things like who was the last person to edit this drawing, what date was this published or printed. We'll get into a few examples later. And this is one of the features here that we will talk about more with the Sheet Set Manager. So I want you to keep in mind some of this information when we do get down to number 8, Sheet Set Manager. Switching back into DraftSight here, we have our sheet space here, sheet 1, and you can see we have a title block set up. I want to focus in on this down here. There's a date here that's just manually entered as text. And what we want to do is insert the date that this sheet will be printed to PDF. So it's essentially the published date. So I'm going to highlight all this text, delete it, and then in the edit note, bar interface here, you can see this icon here represents inserting a field. So if I click on it, you see the field interface comes up here. And we have a few categories here. We have date and time, document, drawing sheet set, which we'll get to later, entities, and others. So for this, we are interested in a date and time because we want to enter the published date. So we'll do date and time here, plot date. You can see we have create date, current date, and the last date that it was saved, but we want plot date. And we're very customizable date formatting here. As you can see, all the different, formats of date here, even hours, minutes, and seconds at the end there. But for this example, we'll just do month, day, year. And usually you get a preview here, but because the drawing has not been published yet, it doesn't have any information to preview. So if I were to go up to normal date, you can see it gives you today's date. So I'll change that back to plot date, month, day, year. Okay. And whenever there is basically a filler or there's no information to be displayed, it will these fields will display these 4 pound symbols here. But eventually those will become a published date. So zooming back out, now I want to go into how to use a field that will pull information directly from the sheet set manager automatically, which we'll go into later. So for this example, let's say we want our sheet title within our title block and sheet numbers to automatically pull basically from the file name. So there already is a field entered here. If I double click on it, I can open up and see that the category for this particular field is drawing sheet set, and the name is the current drawing sheet title. You can see that there's a lot of data and information that kind of lives in this drawing sheet set, but right now what we're going to do is set it up so that it pulls the current drawing sheet title. And just for formatting purposes, you get the option uppercase, lowercase. You get a little formatting option here as well. And because this particular file is not currently associated with a sheet set, the preview is going to give you basically no information. Later on, you'll see how easy it is and how this actually works. But I just kind of want to plant the seed now so that later on we kind of have this in our minds. So I'll click OK. That's all set up. The same thing with the sheet number. Double click on it. You can see category, same category, and then this name is the current drawing sheet number. So, same format, uppercase, press OK. So we'll see that later on when we kind of dive into the sheet set manager. But you can kind of get an idea of how utilizing fields can really save you a lot of time and effort managing certain information and data in your drawing. Before we move on going through some of the additional categories, we kind of looked at date and time, but under document you can see there's author, comments, certain file information like file name, file size, who's the last person to save it, and so on. And then entities, you can actually select individual entities and display certain information about those entities. Next, with number 4, I'm going to be talking about custom blocks and utilizing custom blocks specifically for labeling purposes, like labeling views, detail callouts, section callouts, things like that. The drafting symbols that you'll use on every single drawing sheet set, dozens of times, maybe even hundreds of times, you can really speed up the process of labeling your views, labeling your details, and even linking tags to the correct sheet using hyperlinks. But we'll go over all that here. Jumping back into DraftSight here, what we have is a drawing sheet that shows 4 plan views. And these plan views are annotated using various custom block callouts. So this yellow one down here we have is just the view label. And then these teal ones up here are section callouts. These are also custom blocks. And then up here on the top right, we have our detail callout that is also a custom block. And for this example, I will show the view label here. So if you'll look, the end product here, it shows the view number, the view title, and the scale of the viewport. And in addition to those, you can actually change the length of this line here to match how long the text is, because you don't want this line extending all the way over here. You want to have the freedom to label each view and have it look professional and clean. If I open up the block, so for the sake of time, I'm not going to show the process of adding block attributes. However, I will show how to actually create that stretch element to the geometry, basically how to make that line adjustable in Paperspace. So I'm going to delete this one just for the example. So right here we just have the geometry as well as the attributes here. And in order to add a stretch element, go up to the Element Sets panel in the ribbon, do the drop down and look for linear stretch. So we want to select the start point, which is this end of the line, and then the end point, which is the other end. And now we have created the stretch element there. And in order to select which geometry, which entities we want to stretch, right click the icon there, Activity Selection Set, and Modify Selection Set. So create the stretch window and then select the entities you would like to be stretched. And that looks good. Press enter and we can test out the block. And you can see this line stretches the way we want it, and that looks good. So you can add various different types of elements. You can see linear stretch, linear move pattern. You can do polar move pattern stretch. You have a lot of options there, but they all kind of follow that basic flow that I just showed you, where you add in the element and then you identify what entities you want to be modified. As you can see, it's behaving correctly. Just double click on it. We'll come back to this later, but there's actually fields like what we just talked about entered as the value for these block attributes, and we'll get back to that with Sheet Set Manager. So you can basically have a block attribute autofill by using a field like we just talked about last section. But again, we'll get back to that. And then moving on to the detail block here. So this is a similar concept as what we just went over. However, it's just a slightly different stretch here. So I'll test it out quick. You can see you have more block attributes here with a leader that you can adjust freely like this. So this is actually a polar stretch. It's similar to that linear stretch, except it gives you the option to kind of put it wherever you want rather than just in like an XY plane. And it's the same process as we just did. I'll delete it just to show you. So instead of linear stretch, we're going to go down to polar stretch. The start point will be this end of the leader and the end point will be the tip. So then we have the distance there. Again, we got to right click this icon, new selection set, make our stretch frame, and then add our entities. Press enter and let's test that out. We should be able to move this leader freely. There we go. And the same thing again with these attributes. They're not showing up. Those are actually fields. I'll save this. Same thing as before. These are fields that are autofilling from the Sheet Set Manager, which we will go over later. So moving on to a more complicated example, this section callout. Rather than just one stretch element, there's actually 3 elements going on here. I have a stretch element, a linear stretch element on the end here, so you can make this tag as long or as short as you'd like. And I also have a rotation element up here, so you can actually rotate the element, but the text stays upright, which is nice. So you're actually rotating it to represent what you actually want represented. And then last, there's also a mirror element here, so it mirrors both sides. Again, keeping the text kind of oriented correctly upright the whole time. So this is just a little bit more of an advanced example of what you can kind of do with these custom blocks in terms of creating callout blocks. Moving on to number 5, we have viewports. Viewports essentially act as almost a window from sheet space that allows you to look into model space at various scales. The quick benefit is to be able to draw things true to scale and then easily scale them down to fit properly onto an actual piece of paper without having to redraw or rescale the actual model that has been drawn. So I'm going to open DraftSight Backup to show a few examples, one being how to create different types of viewports, and then additionally, what situations would you use multiple viewports on the same drawing file. So here what I have is a drawing file. We're in paper space right now. And within model space, what I have is a part of a plan view, and it's drawn true to scale. As you can see, if I just take a couple points here, it's about 177 feet wide. So obviously this paper is only 42 by 30 inches, so we are going to have to scale that plan view down to represent it. So rather than manually scaling it down using the scale command, we can actually create a viewport with a built-in scale. That way we don't have to modify our model view every time we want to scale something. So to insert a viewport, you go up to Sheet, and for just a rectangular viewport, you can just do single viewport. And I'll just put one here for now. And as you can see, this, if I double click in here, you can kind of see how it acts almost as a window into model space here. And when I am double clicked into it, if I go down to annotation here, I can select a predefined scale to adjust the model. So I'll do 1/16 inch of paper space equals a foot of the model. And you can see that fits pretty well right here, and you can also adjust after the fact. And that way you kind of have a built-in solidified scale for this sheet here. You can also create viewports out of different entity types. Like for example, if I draw a circle here, go back to Sheet, and if I select Entity Viewport and I select that circle, you can see it turns that circle into a circular viewport, which is really nice, you know, depending on how you're detailing and how you might show an accent circle or something. It just gives you the flexibility to select different types of viewports. You can also create a polygonal viewport, which maybe might come up here and there if you want to just create different shaped viewports. So if I close it there, press enter, you can see that viewport is not just a simple rectangle. So I'm going to jump over to this other file here. And this is a detail sheet here. So you can see there's kind of a lot of information where we have 9 different details. And all of these details are XREF'd into model space here. And they're all drawn true to scale. So I have this set up so that these are constant details. They aren't really going to change. They're kind of stock details. So once they've been created, all you need to do is XREF them in, and you can just move them around, adjust them as needed in paper space rather than, you know, trying to manually adjust these and scale these in model space. So this is just an example of a situation where it would be really helpful and useful to utilize viewports to organize your drawings, your details, and all of that. So you can kind of adjust it as needed. We're going to be coming back to viewports for a few of the sections coming up. I know for annotation scaling, as well as SheetSet Manager, we'll be talking about viewports again, so just keep that in mind as we move forward. Next, with number 6, we have annotative scaling. Annotative scaling lets you achieve consistent and uniform sizes and scales of text, dimensions, and hatches for printouts. For the example that I'll show, it holds the size of text constant even if you change the scale of the viewport. For this topic, we are going to refer right back to viewports that we just wrapped up. As you change the scale of a viewport, an annotative entity will stay the same size in paperspace. And we'll go over an example now. So what I have here is a detail taken from that detail sheet that I showed earlier with the viewports. And the first thing I want to point out is the fact that all of these multi-leaders here in blue and the dimensions in red all have annotative scaling applied to them. And you can tell that if you hover over them, you see the A appear there. All these entities, when I hover over them, that A appears next to my cursor. And that's how you know if an entity has an annotative scaling applied to it. So before I show you an example of annotative scaling on an annotation, I want to go edit the text style just to show you how to actually add annotative scaling to text, dimensions, and multi-leaders. So in the text style interface here, I've selected annotative. And if you go down to height, you can see annotative scaling here is turned on. And what you'll notice here is that you're not specifying the text height in model space. You're actually specifying the text height as it appears in sheet space. So no matter what scale is chosen in a viewport, the text in that viewport will always be 3/32 inch high. So that's great when you're adjusting viewports to fit a certain number of views, like in our detail sheet. I want to fit a certain number of details, and so I have to adjust the scaling in order to fit those details. That way I don't have to re-annotate those details every single time, as long as I use an annotative scale on those. The text resizes itself automatically, and I will show you that now. So again, all of these entities, these annotative entities, have annotative scaling attached. And currently, if you look down here, you can see that the scale that's chosen is 3 inch equals 1 foot. So if I go to paperspace, I'm going to create a viewport. Double click to activate the viewport. Right now there isn't a scale selected, so I'll go back to 3 inch equals a foot. So as you can see, it kind of it cuts off for this for the sake of the example, it cuts off some of our annotations there. So I actually need a smaller scale. So I'll go to 1.5 inch equals a foot. And obviously the first thing you notice is that those annotations have now disappeared. And in order to make sure that they reappear, is you have to go edit the annotations there. So I'll select all of these multi-leaders. And on the right side here, under miscellaneous, you have annotative scale. You have to apply the correct annotative scale that you're using in the viewport for that text to appear. So initially we had that 3 inch equals a foot scale, so the text appeared when that scale was activated. But once we changed it, it disappeared because we didn't have 1.5 inch equals a foot. So now we have to add that as a scale to these entities. Press OK. And if I go back to sheet space, you can see now that text appears. And so I'll go back and forth to just kind of show more. And the nice thing is that when I change these scales, the text stays the same height. So this gives you the freedom to adjust the scaling and not have to manually adjust the annotations that go along with it. So when you're setting up a detail sheet like this one, what you can actually do is if, say, for example, you needed to add 3 more details, well, there's not enough room. So you could just go in, reduce the scale on all of them. I don't have that saved yet, so let's save this because it's an XREF. So what you can actually do, like I said, instead of going through and re-annotating everything and having to redo all these details, you can just change the scale, apply the correct scaling to the annotations, and all you have to do is just reorganize there. So it saves you a lot of time when you talk about orienting details or views and all of that. Coming in at number 7, we have drawing review tools. This is kind of a 2-for-1 topic, actually. I'm going to be talking about the check spelling command, which is self-explanatory, where it runs a spell check on all of your annotative entities to make sure that you don't have any misspellings, as well as our drawing standards tool, which allows you to compare a drawing to a baseline that you've created as a drawing standards file to make sure that all drafting standards have been met. But first, we're going to start out with the check spelling tool. So here I have a drawing file here with some plan views and a handful of annotations on it. So let's say I'm all set with it, but I want to do a final review. If I wanted to review the spelling of everything, I'd head up to the Annotate tab, the text panel, and then you can see check spelling command right here. It's asking me what entities I'd like to check. I'm going to type in all, and it will automatically select all of the annotative entities in this drawing. I'll press enter to run it. And one thing to note is that the default dictionary that it uses will be your system language dictionary. So for mine, it's English. And the more you use this tool, the more it will kind of learn your team's verbiage. So you can add or remove words from the dictionaries, so kind of tell the system what it should and shouldn't flag. So for here, this is just the year format, so I'm actually going to ignore all that. Ignore the same thing. USA, I'd like to add that to my dictionary because I'm going to use it in addresses all the time. So right there, add. URL, I'll ignore that. I still want it there. MEP, I want to add that since we're going to be using MEP engineers all the time. Check, I'm going to add that. CHK for the abbreviation of check. FLS, I'll add that. That's an abbreviation. View title, so that looks like a field autofill or block attribute. I'm going to ignore all these because I know that they are what they should be. See, here we have a misspelling, garage door entrance. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to door. And there we go. Now we know that everything's spelled correctly in our drawing here. So going one step further, if I want to manage and check additional standards, what I can do is go up to the Manage tab, and then in the Standards panel, if you click on Drawing Standards, you're brought to the Options dialog here, and then under Drawing Settings, here's how we can manage our standards. What drawing standards allow you to do is compare the drawing that you're working in to a baseline standard file that you've created. You can compare the following. Under drawing categories, you can compare dimension styles, layers, line styles, and text styles of the drawing that you are working in. Compare that to a standards file. So for example, I will load in this hotel drawing standards file that I've created. Apply. And then just right here, click Verify Standards. And you can see it tells you which standard violation has occurred. So for example, I'm currently using dimension styles that are not a part of my standard. So it will first show you the differences in those dimension styles and then prompt you to either fix or ignore. So by fixing, it would change the dimension styles that I'm using, but for this instance, I'm going to ignore. And then it goes on and on. So there's another dimension style that's being used that is non-standard. So I am going to ignore it. And now another dimension style. Let's say fix that one. And now here we have layers. There's a layer in my drawing here that is non-standard, and you can choose what layer you'd like to put that non-standard layer onto. So it's just another way to just review, make sure that everything is up to speed on the drawings that you are currently working in. And in order to make a drawing standards file, all you have to do is go to the DraftSight dropdown, Save As, and one of the file types that you can choose is this drawing standards DWS file at the bottom. And now with number 8, we have the big one. We have the sheet set manager. So full transparency, I'm not going to have enough time to really get into the weeds with the sheet set manager, but I can show you what the end product looks like. The sheet set manager is a really powerful tool where you can manage an entire sheet set regardless of whatever phase it's in. You can utilize a lot of the things we've talked about, like fields, custom blocks, viewports, and even annotative scaling. And we're going to do that when I show you this. It's a really, really powerful tool. I've actually created this entire data set that I've been showing you using the sheet set manager. So with that, let's just jump into it. I can kind of give you an idea of how powerful the sheet set manager can really be. So to start out, I just have a blank drawing open. And then if you look on the left, you can see the sheet set manager palette here. In order to turn this on and off, just go to sheet up in the ribbon. And then sheet set manager is here. I like to keep it on the left side so that I can still draft and use my properties on the right. But what the sheet set manager allows you to do is control properties and information about each individual file without even ever having to open it up. You can create new sheets, edit the title block, and automatically tag and annotate drawings all through this side panel here. So first, I'm going to create a sheet in this EC0 subset. As you can see, there's a few other subsets, and you can organize and apply different properties to each. But right now, I'm just going to create a new drawing sheet, and you're prompted to give that sheet a number, and I will call it EC000 just because I don't want to keep it in there. Sheet title, I'll just call it Key Plan 2. And you can see it automatically generates a file name based on just the number and the sheet title that you enter here. And I do want to open it in the drawing editor. Press OK. And it's generated a new sheet based on a template that I specified. The template lives in the sheet set properties here. I'm not really going to have time to go into in-depth on each individual property here, but just know through this interface here, you can set a DWT, a drawing template file, to create all your new sheets with. So I have this blank sheet here, and I want to direct your attention to the title block information on the right here. So what you can actually do is, if you'll notice, I've set up some fields here, like this, the project name is actually tied to this drawing sheet set. It's the property current drawing sheet set project name. So it will automatically pull the project name from this properties panel. You can see the project name, Newer Hotel. Let's rename that just to Hotel Design. And that field, if I run the rebuild command, rebuild all, it will automatically update based on the properties that I enter through this panel here. And the nice thing is you can do that for all the title blocks of every single file here. So all these files, you can change the information on the title block from this panel without ever having to open up the files themselves if you set up your templates correctly with the proper fields in the title blocks. So if I scroll down here, you can see I have the phase here. This is a field as well. This pulls from the project milestone, project phase here. You can see project control, phase design development, milestone 50%. So that field pulls from there. These dates and names are all fields. Again, all controlled through this panel here, as well as the sheet title and sheet number. So you can imagine, you know, if you're managing these sheets, let's say you have to add a sheet in the middle of this EC1 subset. Well, instead of having to open up each individual file in that subset, you can just right click and edit the properties of it. Just edit the sheet number and everything will update from there. So it just saves so much time and headache from that standpoint of managing just sheet numbers, sheet titles, title block information, things along that line. And another layer of the sheet set manager are these model views here. So the way this works is that you select a folder on your drive that contains DWGs that you will use as your models. So basically things that will live in the model space. You can see this actually reflects the folder structure that's on your whatever folder you select. So because this is the key plan sheet, I'm going to go into my key plan folder that I've created, and I want to insert this level 1 enclosure plan onto this sheet. So if I right click, place on sheet, it gives me a viewport here, a very large viewport because it fits the true to scale model. And I want to insert it here, and I do want to scale it down so that it can actually fit on the sheet. And going back to the viewport scales that we talked about earlier, I want to give it a real scale. That's too big. A real scale so that I can actually use it. And one thing, if you noticed, this view label tag was inserted automatically. And so with this is another layer that's really powerful, where you can automatically label these viewports and views that you insert just through the sheet set manager. You can assign custom blocks as your callout blocks or view name blocks. This is a view name block or a view label block. And you can have all of this information autofill based on what you input here. So if I go down to my sheet view, this is sheet EC000. This is the view. If I double click, it brings me to this view that I've just inserted. And it's automatically pulling the information from this view into this view label block. And you'll notice there isn't a view number here, so let's assign one so it can actually display the correct information. So if I renumber, let's call this view number 1. And I want to clean this up a little bit, take out some of the abbreviations. Let's say level 1 enclosure, just clean it up, make it more legible. Press OK. And now we want to rebuild our, and then there we go. So that also eliminates the headache and time required to renumber, relabel, make sure everything's consistent on your view labels. You know, going back to that detail sheet that we've talked about, all of these details, all of these tags pull information from this sheet set manager. You can see I have these views numbered 1 to 9 and named correctly here. So if I need to renumber this or reorder it or anything like that, you just renumber things here. For example, I'll change number 5 to number 15. Press OK. Rebuild it. You can see it changes right there. And taking things one step further, speaking of this detail sheet, let's assume that, for the sake of the example, I want to add a detail tag onto my key plan here that I just created that calls out this north wall base condition elevation detail. So what you can do is, we know that the detail we're trying to reference is detail number 1 on page EC141. So if we right click on that detail, we can place a callout block that we've created using custom blocks. This is something that I've done to set this up. I want a detail tag with the leader on the left, so I select that. And you can actually insert a detail tag with the pre-filled out information straight from the sheet set manager. So I can label it, let's say it's right there. I can label it there, and you're good to go. And there's even a hyperlink built in, so if I want to look at this detail, all I do is control click on it, and it will take me straight to the detail that it's referencing. And another great thing is, if I were to, let's say, if I were to have to reorganize my detail sheet here and turn this detail into detail number 7, or let's use one that's not already been used, detail number 11. So let's say number 1 we have to change to 11. I will rename and renumber Let's say 11. Okay. Just rebuild it. It's number 11. What actually happens here is all you need to do is rebuild it, and it updates based on the changes that you make here. So there's a lot that goes into using a sheet set and managing it with the sheet set manager. We don't have time for everything, but keep an eye out for a future webinar that is a real deep dive on how to set up sheet sets, how to manage them, and how to maintain them efficiently. Because it is really a really in-depth topic that I think you can do some really powerful things with it in terms of time management. So starting to wrap up here with number 9, we have the batch print capability. So I saved this for after Sheet Set Manager because you can actually batch print from the Sheet Set Manager directly, whether it's the entire sheet set or certain subsets of the sheet set. You also have the option to batch print manually from your hard drive or wherever you're working out of. However, the integration right into the Sheet Set Manager is an interesting extra layer into batch print capabilities. So I'm going to show you that right now. Alright, so here in DraftSight I have my general notes sheet, which for my sheet set is the first sheet. I don't have a cover sheet, so what I'm going to do is go up to the DraftSight drop down, print, batch print. I would like to add the current open drawing, and then it tells you that drawings must be saved, so you save the drawing. And from this interface, this might look familiar. You can add individual files or an entire folder of DWGs into your batch print. So I'm going to add a folder. And you can see all the DWGs in that folder are now loaded into my batch print. And you can select if you want to print the model and the sheet space. I'm interested in only the sheet space. And you can actually import existing batch print lists, BPL files, from your other 2D CAD tool if you utilize batch print lists. So that's always a useful tool to be able to utilize legacy data. You know, select your folder that you'd like your print to output in. And for this, I will select my folder, select this one. And everything else looks good to go, so you are good to start. I don't want to save this batch print list. And you can see on the bottom right, you get the little indication that your batch print is running in the background. It should not take too long to finish up, and while that finishes, I'm going to show you how to batch print from your Sheet Set Manager interface here. So here we have our sheet set that we went over last section. If you'd like to print the entire sheet set, what you can do is right-click on the sheet set folder, and if you go down to Publish, you can publish to PDF, or DWF, DWFX, or even print it. You can also do this same batch print just from this icon up here, Publish. That gives you that same interface there. And you also have the ability, if you're only interested in publishing certain subsets of your sheet set, so let's say, for example, EC2, you can print only that subset if you'd like. So you kind of get the flexibility to quickly print from this sheet set interface on the fly and on the go. So last but not least, with number 10, we have the Pack and Go feature. Another one that I purposely saved for after the Sheet Set Manager because you can pack and go directly from the Sheet Set Manager. But Pack and Go basically lets you package up a drawing file as well as any externally referenced files within that file and any additional files needed in order to open a particular file. The benefit here is that you can take an entire sheet set, package up everything including XREFs, callout blocks, everything, and you can share it with other disciplines or teams so that they themselves can open up and use your DWG files. So here in DraftSight, I have a drawing file open that has 4 external references in it. So if I wanted to pack and go all of the files associated with this DWG so that another user can open it and use it successfully, I would go up to the DraftSight menu here, Export, Pack and Go. And what you'll see here is that all of the files associated with this one DWG will be packaged up and compressed to be shared. Because this file is associated with a sheet set, you'll see that there are sheet set files that will be packaged. The overall sheet set DST file will be packaged. Our label blocks that we use to automatically annotate and tag our drawings will be packaged up. And the drawing template used to create new files will be. And if you go over to table here, you can scroll down all of the files with a preview here that will be packaged up. So our external references here will be packaged up, the hotel sheet file, label blocks like we said, and the drawing template. And along with all of this, you have settings here where you can adjust the properties of your compression here. You can change the file type, the package type, file format, the target folder where you want to export these, file name, and you also have the ability to clean the drawing. So basically removing all excess data that's in these drawings so that you can reduce the file size when compressing, which is really nice. That option's over here with clean drawings. And if you have fonts that are not system default fonts, you can include fonts as well. So I'll press OK there and get that export going. And just like that, it's very quick. You now have a zip file where you can share your drawing there, and you can do the same thing with an entire sheet set as well. So if I want to pack and go on this entire sheet set, we'll be able to package up every single drawing file with every single external reference and linked file as well. So you can see all of these files will be packaged up and sent along to whoever needs to receive it. So with that, I'd like to wrap up quickly so we can get to a quick Q&A. I want to thank everyone for attending today. I hope you enjoyed these 10 tips and tricks for AEC and DraftSight. As you can see here, we have the 10 topics again: page layout manager, PDF import, fields, custom blocks, viewports, annotative scaling, drawing review tools, sheet set manager, batch plot, and pack and go. If you'd like to learn more about DraftSight, you can visit our website, DraftSight.com, where we have all sorts of information there regarding license options, pricing, as well as news and announcements that come out. You can also access our free trial at DraftSight.com, where you get a free 30-day trial of DraftSight Premium, essentially Premium and Enterprise Plus, so you can try out the tool for yourself. And you can also find documentation about new features, making the switch from other 2D CAD tools, and training materials. So with that, I want to jump over to our Q&A portion with the remaining time that we have left, so we can get that started.